Today, mankind is faced with the choice of peace or war, said the Chinese President Xi Jinping as he told 50,000 spectators in Tiananmen Square that the Chinese people firmly stand on the right side of history, as he put it. The country's largest ever military parade, then with Xi flanked by Russia's Vladimir Putin and North Korea's Kim Jong-un, a lavish event to mark 80 years since Japan's defeat at the end of World War II, with Putin and Kim, pariahs in the West, the guests of honour.
Today, humanity again has to choose between peace and war, between dialogue and confrontation, win-win cooperation, or a zero-sum game. The Chinese people firmly stand on the right side of history and the progress of human civilization. We will remain committed to the path of peaceful development and join hands with all peoples around the world in building a community with a shared future for humanity.
Well, our international affairs commentator Doug Herbert is with me here on set. Doug, very interesting watching those pictures at the top. You've got Xi Jinping, you've got Kim Jong-un, Vladimir Putin flanking him. And those other two have met and talked as well, haven't they?
Yeah, all of these photo ops, right? You know, the threesome, the twosomes. It's interesting because, you know, we're living in the age of visual media, social media. Photo ops tend to sort of upstage the main event, the parade itself. We're talking more about that photo and these two together. Look, they're not natural-born partners. Even though in recent months and years, Stuart, it's true that Vladimir Putin, Kim Jong-un have found more and more common cause. We have seen them hold summits together. We also saw the glitzy summit that Vladimir Putin attended in Pyongyang, the North Korean capital, a few months back. And we also know about that so-called Strategic Cooperation Treaty that both Kim Jong-un and Putin signed. What was it about? Well, the main plank of it, if you will, was they both pledged that in the event of, quote, aggression against either country, they would come to the other's aid. Now, North Korea, you can argue, has certainly been doing that. Kim Jong-un has been helping Putin directly to fight his war of aggression in Ukraine by sending troops, up to 15,000 by some estimates, plus military equipment. What do we mean? Ballistic missiles, artillery that have helped Putin sustain and further continue his 3+ year war against Ukraine. Russia, for its part, what has it done for Kim Jong-un lately? Well, it has sent, according to most interpretations of this accord, perhaps space technology that could presumably be used maybe in Kim's missile program, ballistic missile program I was just mentioning, and also just the general insinuation that if there were to be a conflict on the Korean Peninsula, i.e. between perhaps the North and the South and some other countries, perhaps Russia would step in and help the way Kim Jong-un has been helping Putin. So it's easy to sort of just, you know, sneer off and dismiss these two leaders sitting side by side today. But the photo op, it's more than just symbolism. These are really two autocratic leaders meeting out of necessity and pledging cooperation with each other, even as at the same time they wonder how enduring that cooperation might be when one or the other is in a period where they perhaps don't have to rely as much on the partner.
Let's talk about the man in the middle as well, Xi Jinping, putting on this massive military display. What message is he trying to send, and how do you think it might be interpreted here in the West as well?
Well, the message he's trying to send is, I'm strong, I am powerful. No, I'm not afraid of anyone. We, China, fear no one, especially not the hegemonic U.S. West, especially not, although not explicitly named, Donald Trump, who has been, according to his latest Truth Social posts, been following this relatively closely. He's also saying China's not emerging, China's emerged. China is ready to step up and assume what he sees, its rightful role on an alternative new global stage as a more responsible, as a more reliable, as a more mature potential counterweight to the U.S.-led hegemonic Western order. That's how he is pitching it. That's how he's presenting it. The military parade is the window dressing on that message. When you bring out all your fancy, shiny new military objects, you asked how the West is. Yeah, Western military analysts are all scrutinizing every single tank, every single aircraft that flew overhead today in Beijing. They're looking at that. It's not so much out of fear and apprehension, but also curiosity about what comes next. It's a strong message. that Xi Jinping is putting his military might where his mouth is, and he's showing the world, not just saying to the world, that we are here and do not try to challenge us because it will not turn out well for you.
And we shouldn't forget, of course, the parade set to mark the 80th anniversary of the defeat of Japan in World War II. But China sees this very differently as to how you or I might see it.
Yeah. So first of all, the name of the war, right? We call it World War II, right? The Russians call it the Great Patriotic War, right? So for the Chinese, it's the War of the People's Resistance Against Japanese Aggression. Very explicit and very clear. Japan invaded China in 1937. At the time, Japan was a relatively modernized Western-style military. China had practically nothing. It had no tanks. It had a few aircraft. That was it. What happened next, it was atrocities. It was a brutal, brutal war that Japan waged against China, perhaps exemplified, if you read your history books, by the so-called rape of Nanjing and all of the atrocities that happened there, urban warfare at its worst. What happened, though, next, and this is where we're seeing a little bit of, historians say, some revisionism or rewriting of history, Xi Jinping trying to draw a direct line to the Communist Party's defeat of Japan in 1945, and to today, the rise of the Communist Party at the helm of a modern China. In fact, there were a nationalist government in place at the time. Yes, the Chinese Communist Party was on the rise, but it was just beginning its rise. It was the nationalists who showed really the real first resistance, and some historians say they deserve perhaps more credit than the communists for ultimately vanquishing the Japanese. I will note this, also not mentioned, and this alludes perhaps to Trump's tweet about the Western contribution. It's no little matter. First of all, Russian forces invaded the north of China, pushing back the Japanese towards the end of the war, helping in that victory. So there's Russia there. But there's also the not so small matter of the bombings, the nuclear bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which directly led to the surrender of Japan. Those are not acknowledged. This is not to minimize the Chinese losses and casualties in that war. They were horrendous, up to 20 million civilian and military deaths on the Chinese side, some of that due to the incompetence, gross incompetence of the nationalist government that breached dikes, leading to some of history's deadliest floods, hundreds of thousands of Chinese unnecessarily dying as a result. Sure, it slowed the Japanese advance, but with absolutely grievous, fatal consequences for the Chinese. They lost millions of lives, as did the Soviets and their Red Army in World War II. In that sense, their narrative is absolutely right. They think they deserve more credit. They should be able to have a say in that global narrative about World War II, and also more of a say, by extension, in today's world and this world order.